7:04 p.m. Dana, will you please call the roll?
Jared Vinson.
Here.
Ed Cupits.
Here.
Rick Hagelstein.
Here.
Randy Cant.
Excused.
Connie Chapman.
Here.
Mandy Barnett.
Excused.
Mike Tremblay.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum. Before we start the business part of the meeting, I ask that everyone rise for our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Most of you are probably already familiar with this, but this is a public business meeting of the Planning Commission for Bruce Township. But we do welcome public comments along the way at various points in our agenda. We request that all have signed in to the log along the wall there, so we know who was here. We have the attendance of who was here. Commission is made up of 7 Bruce Township citizens. They're appointed by the board. In addition, we have a township employee, Dana Buchanan, to my left, to assist us with the recording of the meeting. And we ask her from time to time to also participate in our meeting. We also have Joe Tangari to my right to assist the commission in its work. Joe is a professional planner with Giffords Webster. So that's the committee and support. There will be opportunities on our agenda for public questions and comments. Generally, we ask people to keep it to 3 minutes. But in a situation where one speaker may represent a group of people, we will extend that to 5 minutes. It doesn't mean it's spot on at the second everything stops. We'll accommodate the conversation that needs to occur. But we do ask that everyone is mindful of the target times for people to talk. And when you move to the podium, you should state your name and address, so we have that as well for the record. And we ask that you address your comments to the commissioners. Commissioners are the decision makers this evening, and not to the petitioner or any other member of the audience. If we follow this guidelines, it'll make for a good meeting and best use of time for all of us. On behalf of all the commissioners, we appreciate everyone that's here and your participation as we serve the community. And note that we are a recommending body to the Bruce Township board members who will make the final decision on anything that comes before them, including something from tonight's agenda. And we send along our recommendations, and they incorporate their experience and knowledge as well. So with that, I'm going to ask the commissioners if there's any changes to the meeting minutes from the last meeting, which was June 1st was our last meeting. Commission, any changes needed?
I think there's a typo on the minutes on page 3. Towards the middle, where it says motion carried, the 7B thing.
Mm-hmm.
You see that?
Yep.
Second sentence down says motion by Tremblay, and I think it should say 2 open.
Yep. Instead of T.
Yep.
Any other changes? Okay, I'll make a motion to approve those minutes as modified.
I'll second.
Motion by Cupits, Chapman seconded. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Oppose any? Nay. Motion carries. Okay, the next item is to approve the agenda. We all have that in front of us and wondering if there's any changes, or are we in a position where we can approve that agenda?
I move to approve the agenda as stated.
Second.
Approval, or the motion to approve the agenda by Mike, Tremblay, and seconded by Rich Hagelstein. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we're on item number 6, public comment. And we have an agenda item that I think most people are here for, but if you are not here to talk about our unfinished business section, but you have other issues, questions, or comments you want to make relative to something the commission should hear about, you can approach the podium, and as I said, name and phone address would be appreciated. Okay, so no one approaching. We'll go on to number 7 on our agenda. There are no public hearings scheduled for tonight. We have no reviews, so we're moving through our standard agenda. And now we're on the section called Communications. And I have one for the commissioners, and that is we have talked about a joint meeting between ourselves and other groups within the township, including the township supervisor and ZBA, et cetera. And at the moment, it looks like we're going to be doing an October meeting, so more will come out on that. I'll verify with Mike Philbrook to make sure it's still a good time for him, and we'll send something out. The other thing, Joe and I have talked about some training options that he will prepare for future meetings. That continues. Again, if you have anything that you would like Joe to address, let either he or I know, and we'll try to get that included. We have, for the public, we have 2 new members of the commission. They are not here tonight, and so we're trying to bring them up to speed as quickly as we can to help the rest of the commissioners. Anything anyone has on unfinished business that we need to discuss? Okay, hearing none. Moving ahead. Okay, now the next section that we have deals with unfinished business. Joe, the first one on the docket is the 156 West Gates rezoning.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any intro comments to make before we get started?
I can make some comments. I can kind of summarize some things just so that everyone's memory is refreshed. So this is the property at 156 West Gates. It is immediately west of the Deer Park development. And the request is to rezone that property from R1B, which is its current zoning designation, to RM1. R1B is a single-family designation, and RM1 is the one of the multifamily districts that we have. And the site is 5.23 acres, just so everyone's aware of its size. They have provided with their request for rezoning a set of 10 conditions. This is something that under Michigan law, a person requesting a rezoning may add conditions voluntarily to the request for rezoning that limit the scope of the rezoning or of development that could occur after the rezoning. They've changed a little bit over time as we've discussed this. I do think it would make sense for me to go through the 10 conditions that they're offering just so that everyone can hear them and knows what they are. Condition 1, a site plan will consist of 5 ranch-style attached condominiums, each containing 4 units with attached garages. So there's 20 units in 5 buildings, all ranch-style. And they've provided an exhibit, Exhibit A, that is a conceptual plan of that. Number 2 is each building condominium will be bricked and built to the renderings attached here to this agreement, labeled Exhibit B. I don't have a printout of that at hand, but they have provided an exhibit of what the buildings roughly would look like. Number 3, each unit will be a minimum of 1,400 square feet, have a minimum 2 bedrooms, and an attached 2-car garage, a full basement, a front covered porch, and a rear concrete patio. The township will grant any and all setback variances needed for an increase in unit square footage. We can talk about that last sentence there a little later. Item 4, the road will be private or dedicated to the Macomb County Road Commission and built to the standard specs required by Macomb County Road Commission. Number 5, the site plan is contingent on the approval of Bruce Township Engineering and Fire Department requirements. 6, I'll talk about that one a little bit too. 6, the township agrees to use the existing sanitary sewer capacity and existing or new Village of Romeo municipal water usage through an existing modified or new 425 agreement. 7, the site plan as presented will include, where feasible and permissible, a grassy berm with assorted landscaping adjacent to the west side of the entry road to the condominiums. 8, Tom Sirikoff will advertise this project as a 55-plus community subject to all federal and state of Michigan fair housing laws. Number 9, stormwater discharge designs will meet Macomb County Public Works drain office requirements and Eagle regulations. And then 10, the township agrees on the lot split and any variances needed for the 156 Westgate's vacant lot to build a new home by the owner. So there were a couple that I kind of stuck a pin in there. It's really a wording thing on number 3. It says township will grant any and all setback variances needed for an increase in unit square footage. The applicant can't actually commit the township to that. So the way it's worded is a little is not quite right. I think it's really, if they're offering it as a condition, it would have to be that we'll move forward if those setback variances are granted. And then 6, again, is also kind of worded as though it's asking the township to do something. The township agrees to use the use of sanitary sewer capacity, et cetera. That's really something that would be a contingency, that things would move forward if the township agrees to that, and that would be a requirement. And then the same with the last one, the lot split and variances, that's if the township grants those, things will move forward. So those are the conditions as they stand now. And then just a few other things. We've talked about the master plan designation for this on the future land use map. Every time we've discussed this, low to moderate density single family was the future land use map designation for the property. There's an existing home on the site. We will let the applicant discuss their plans and things for that. They did submit a traffic study. I don't know exactly when that was, to be honest. It was a while ago. Because this is over 5 acres, we do require a traffic study for a rezoning request. At that time, that noted that there wouldn't be an anticipated change in the level of service on West Gates or at nearby intersections if this development were built to the conceptual plan. And then we do have our usual list of items to consider when evaluating a rezoning. And if you'd like me to go through those, I can. If you'd like me to skip them for now, we can move on to just discussing.
Why don't you go through
Okay.
them now?
All right. So we've got those questions here. One is the proposed zoning consistent with the master plan? Two is what impact would the requested zoning have on public services and utilities and natural features? I'll go through my responses after I get through the questions here. Three is, has the applicant provided evidence that the property cannot be developed or used as zoned? Four is the proposed zoning district and potential land uses compatible with surrounding uses? The next one is, will the proposed zoning place a burden on nearby thoroughfares? If so, how would this burden compare with the existing zoning district? The next one is there other land currently available for this use? Will development of the site under proposed zoning be able to meet zoning district requirements? Is rezoning the best way to address the request, or could the existing zoning district be amended to add the proposed use as a permitted or special land use? Has there been a change in circumstances and conditions since adoption of the master plan that would support the proposed change? And then the last one is a collection of questions. So, would granting the request result in the creation of an unplanned spot zone? There's a legal case that's cited there that set forth what constitutes a spot zoning. And there are three sub-questions that we ask. Is the rezoning request consistent with the master plan for the area? Is the proposed zoning district a logical extension of an existing zoning district in the area? And would approving the request grant a special benefit to a property owner or developer? So to quickly touch on the information that I provided after each of those questions, as I said, the master plan has this on the future land use map as a moderate density single-family parcel. The conceptual plan is calling for 20 units. That's 3.82 units per acre. So in the R1B district, you get slightly more than 2 units per acre. And this site could accommodate, just by math, by raw math, 12 units under the current zoning, likely due to the need for infrastructure and things and fitting in the lots and things. It would not be 12, but by the math, 12 units is the max. The property is currently used as zoned. There's a house on it. The site's surrounded by a mix of attached and detached housing. And I've given you a list in the letter of the permitted and special land uses in the RM1 district. And of course, the conditions for rezoning that they're offering do limit the future development of the parcel to a maximum of 20 units if they are granted the rezoning. And it doesn't leave the door open for the other uses that are permitted in the district either. It says, if we get the rezoning, there's going to be 5 ranch-style attached condominiums, each containing 4 units with attached garages. So that's what will happen here if this rezoning is granted with the conditions that have been offered. I already mentioned the traffic study. Is there other land currently available for the use? Their nearest RM1 property that's vacant is on the east side of M53. It does appear that the RM1 development standards could meet the district requirements, or it could be met on this site. If you built a development here, you could meet the setbacks. You could design it so that those setbacks were met. When we look at whether or not rezoning is the most appropriate way to address what they want to do, generally speaking, we wouldn't contemplate adding multifamily development to the R1B district, which is explicitly a single-family district. So amending the district itself is not something we would do. Has there been a change in circumstances and conditions? Development in the area predates the last master plan. There's nothing really new there since the last master plan. And then the final questions about the spot zoning. There is part parcel next door that has the same zoning designation that this parcel has, so I don't think spot zoning would come into play here. If there's any questions for me before we start talking to the applicant, I'm happy to answer them.
Joe, you said it's possible to meet the RM1 zoning requirements. Does the plan as presented do that?
Well, just looking at it, it does appear that the way they've designed this, let me check one thing, but in terms of density, the answer is yes. And the only thing I see is a rear setback that is shown as 20.1 feet. The rear setback for the district is 50 feet. They've got 50 feet for the side setbacks rather than 20, which is what's required, so there's probably some movement that could occur there.
Okay. And then number 10 on those conditions lists, lot and variances needed to build a new home by owner. Does that mean the existing home is planned to go away? Like I'm not.
That is something that we'll let the applicant speak to. I think they can clarify what their intentions are there.
Okay.
Any other questions? Joe?
Number 5,
Mm-hmm.
there's been so many meetings on this. At one point, the fire chief was here
Mm-hmm.
and said it wasn't good for the fire department. They did not have enough room in the back.
Mm-hmm.
But has it been changed since then? I mean,
Um,
I couldn't even tell you what meeting that was, how long ago, and what the plan was, because it's changed so many times.
it was probably a couple years ago, I think.
But at that time, the fire chief said they couldn't get their equipment in there.
Yeah, that's, I do recall that being said at the time. They have changed the conceptual plans since then. If things are built to Macomb County standards, as it
Have to
says,
be
it would
acceptable.
have to be, yeah.
To the fire department, okay.
And is that requirement the ability to go in, turn around, and come back out?
That's part of it. They need certain access requirements to the various buildings. I don't know the fire code in detail, but yes, they need to be able to get their apparatus in and out, and they also need to be able to access. They need a certain number of angles of approach to a building if it becomes involved in a fire.
Stage for a big fire.
Exactly. Yeah. And some of that can be, I don't know, I mean, they probably haven't thought about this yet, but some of that can be addressed through fire suppression systems as well. So oftentimes if a fire department is concerned about a particular access issue, they will require that fire suppression systems be added to the building
Okay.
to address the issue.
All right, well, I don't see anyone looking to do more questions, so I'll turn it over to the petitioner to update us on your thoughts and plans.
Morning, Tom Surkoff, on behalf of 156 West Gate Street. We've been here quite a few times. Everyone's familiar faces, so I'm sure we have a lot of the same questions again. We've gone through most of them. The set of 10 conditions we just went through, so I'm not going to go through all of those again. I will address a couple of the things. The fire department was designed by the turning radius. We did that a couple years ago, so
It
that
was
should
changed,
be good.
okay.
Yep. The sanitary sewer, I think there might be some temporary language that you guys might have from another 425 agreement. I'm not sure if that was handed out. I didn't get a copy,
Yeah.
but I heard that it was handed out to you guys. And we were gonna keep the house last time. Everyone said they didn't want the house there, so the house would be removed, but it would be replaced with a vacant lot to a new home that would be built to conform to the natural flow of the houses that are already on Westgate Street that are there. And then the condos would kind of be behind that.
Now, are you building that, or are you gonna sell the land in order to have someone build?
We would probably build it, or I would sell the lot to to help pay for the tearing down of the house and debris removal and things like that. That would help us,
Okay.
with some of the costs to, remove the home and some of the testing that we've done. We also have done a soil sample test, which we have David from McDowell and Associates here tonight, that he can field maybe any questions or concerns that they have. He's already elated to me, if you don't plan on putting wells there, there isn't any issues that I see, but if there is some questions from anybody, I'll let you guys take care of that. And I think that's just about all I had. Mike, if you got anything to add, or the township has any questions?
Well, we try to address, like, we met with the questions that came up the last time around and try to address every single question. We did approach the existing engineer that had designed the Deer Park project to see if he had some input to, relax some of the issues or concerns that the neighbors have. And I also contacted the township engineer, Mr. Cody Wilson, to try to get some more, maybe additional elaboration on some of the concerns to answer them from the township side. And both of them are like, we don't look at these until they're designed. We want submittal, full sets of plans. We don't answer questions on hypotheticals. We answer the questions when everything is done. You submit it to the township. Township gives us a work order, and we review it. So I was trying to get them to get some easy answers, just to, have a third-party basis to answer some of the questions. I know as a homeowner, everyone gets, nervous and scared on things that they don't know. And as a developer, we kind of take an assumption that it's never going to be a problem. So having them answer some of those questions would have been nice, but nobody wants to answer questions. So did the best we can talking to our own engineering and try to design things that we feel that the land being that it's a little bit higher than the Deer Park project, it gives us a little advantage in terms of when you go ahead and put any sewer or water line in the ground. If we run into any water conditions, it's at a higher level, so that we're not hurting anything that's below that. And from what I understand, the wells on the project in Deer Park are much deeper than any condition of a basement depth that would create any conditions for draining their wells. But I think the soils engineer can speak to that with any questions. So if you have any questions specifically to our new list of conditions, that we can answer them, we would do so. Otherwise, we'd like to have you ask some questions to the soils engineer.
Any questions?
I have a question for Joe. It's not explicitly stated in the conditions, but the applicant has stated that the existing house will be torn down. Would we want that explicitly stated in the conditions? So there's no ambiguity.
Obviously, they have to
We can add that
want
to
to
our
add that, yeah.
conditions.
And the second question is for the developer. We had multiple work group sessions in between meetings. One of the things that we talked about at the last meeting was potential adverse impacts to surrounding wells. We asked you to take a look at the August Planning Commission meeting to see what we did with Mentco Timbers. And there's nothing in the conditions that address that. Is there a reason for that?
Well, what we thought would be better is to have an actual soils engineer go out there and drill. Because a lot of the concerns that we've heard in multiple meetings were issues with aqueducts, aquifers, potential flooding. And we felt we'll spend the money now, have the guys go out there, drill, and let them speak exactly to what's in the ground that would address some of your questions.
So you didn't look at the Mentco Timbers conditions? that
No,
we
because
had?
each property is gonna be different to its own conditions of the property. I
But
thought
these
that-
conditions were very general. It could be applied to any property.
Yes, but again, going back to the engineers.
So my question is, did you look at it?
I didn't look at that project, no.
Okay, thank you.
No.
I did take a look at it. I think Rick had forwarded it to me a little bit, and that's when I decided to spend the money and have the soil samples done from a professional and have them rebuttal on something like that.
But in the agreement that we had with Manco Timbers that we amended, there's some mitigation in there. Did you,
Yeah, I
Look at
didn't
that
know
or
we were
consider
gonna
that?
put anything in
Okay.
that in the conditions at this time.
Yeah, I think we're leaning more on the approval of Eagle and the county and the township engineers. And when we look at the Eagle requirements and regulations, they have specific items in there that regulate these conditions to protect the wells adjoining any property or adjacent to that property. So I think that, instead of trying to pre-design or pre-engineer or pre-think what's gonna happen, if we follow those rules and we agree to follow all those rules and submit the designs, we're gonna have to follow the rules. And you're getting 3 bites at the apple because you got the county, you got the state, and you have the township engineers who are very experienced at this type of project that would protect any conditions. If they come up with something based on the soils report, because that's what they're gonna ask for is a soils report, then they address it, and then we can look at it, because for us to comment or promise or say we can mitigate before that, we'd have to talk to the insurance company, or there's gonna be a bonding agent, and we just don't know if they even exist today compared to what 2008 and 9, when a lot of them got wiped out during the recession.
There is also what's called the natural flow doctrine that the Michigan courts have adopted. I'll read a little bit of this. This means that the natural surface waters created by rain or snow must be allowed to flow unrestricted on lands at lower elevations over natural water courses. Generally, landowners are prohibited from artificially increasing the speed or amount of water or backing up of water by erecting dams or to force divergence on someone else's property. The Michigan Supreme Court upheld the verdict in favor of the defendants, finding the plaintiff owner the lowlands must accept surface waters naturally drains on their land, since that natural flow doctrine has been the law of the land. So that's something that was,
And what I would add to that is, because I know a lot of questions came up with, what is the water course or the natural water course for drainage, which usually goes through the county. The county chooses how that water is gonna drain. I found a document from Deer Park that Deer Park was sued by a gentleman adjacent to the property. The calculations of carrying his water flow on his property through Deer Park was in that agreement, and Deer Park would not let them drain through it. And the courts overruled, it says, no, they have to let them drain through it. Now, 3 acres of Mr. Surkoff's property is also in that calculation. But just to make sure that the neighbors don't feel that we want to impede it all and follow that same guideline, we're willing to store all of our water in a brand-new detention and not use any of that 3 acres that was built into their system. So it gives additional buffer. I was talking to Mr. Lind, he says, oh yeah, that would just give you even more buffer, because their pond originally was designed to carry 10.02 acres. So that 5.9 was their own, and then 3 is ours, and there was some neighbors that also had to collect those waters. So in that lawsuit, even the township engineer agreed that he has the right to drain using that water course that was already subject to the design of when they put Deer Park in. And I can give that to you if you're good with that.
Any other questions on the board?
I don't know if anybody got a 425 agreement. I did not get a 425 agreement. What I got was a separation agreement, which is not a 425 agreement. So I have not seen one.
Same here.
Did you guys get one?
it's supposed to be an example of an existing one, because I asked
Well, if
Dana.
this is an example of an existing one, this is a separation agreement.
Yeah, it says,
I don't think you would like it.
I didn't even see it. I
Because
haven't
the
seen
separation
it.
agreement
I have no
requires the
clue what it
existing
looks
property
like.
owner to pay twice as much in water bill.
It wasn't provided to me, so I don't even know.
It's not a 425.
I don't have it, yeah.
So
There
that
should
wasn't
be an
provided.
existing 425 agreement at that site, because there's already Romeo water site there. I requested that from the township about a month or so ago, and someone said they were gonna bring an example to the meeting. That's all I know. But I wanted to find out, where's the existing 425 agreement to the 156 Gates property, which should be at the township somewhere.
And only for purposes that if it could be modified, that's great to modify it. If we have to do a brand new one, we would have to do a brand new one. I just thought it would give us insight to, if it's already in existence to that property, and we have to modify it to a larger
I didn't provide
water
that.
main, we could do so.
Yeah, Dana, did you get a FOIA request
No,
for that?
no,
So your answer is no.
no. I don't know, yeah, I'm not aware of what
Okay.
he's talking about.
Yeah, the only thing we have is that it's this water service agreement between the Village of Romeo and Charter Township of Washington regarding St. Clement's Church, where the village has agreed to allow disconnect from their services and allow Washington to connect their water services to the St. Clement's Church. So what we got doesn't apply to.
And I don't have that, Rick, so I
Yeah,
apologize.
but I mean, Tom, it's no value anyway, because it
Yeah.
doesn't apply to what you're requesting. And
Get it. This is the first time for me seeing
when
it.
I did look up 425 agreements on the web, repeatedly, there's reference to, trying to think how to describe this, but basically, tax revenues, the division of tax revenues between the two municipalities during the interim period when the 425 is in effect. And let's say that there were a 425 agreement, and from what I'm reading, it's a provision that would have to be negotiated. Terms would have to be negotiated between Bruce Township and the Village of Romeo. And what we've seen over the past greater than a year regarding increase to sewer capacity from the village to Bruce Township. Correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not seeing them giving up anything for free. So 425, having this provision in there for, again, what's the separation of tax revenues during the interim period, and then what's the exit strategy for a dissolution? Let's say that it were allowed, and at some point in time, we brought in Great Lakes water. So all these are unanswered questions, but there's, I've got concerns about it.
And that's not that shouldn't have to do with the rezoning, you know, that's part of the site plan. But the 425 agreement has to be done by the township, it can't be done by us.
Well, to be honest with you, Tom, I'm not sure about what the exact process is,
Yeah, the
but,
township has to request it.
but it's not happened, and if the township needs to do it, I mean, I haven't heard of a formal request being made. So, I would think there would need to be a sit-down between probably our supervisor and the village president. Mike, would you?
Well, I
Think
would
that
think that
appro-
any agreement that we would sign with the Village of Romeo and yourself, that would have to be mutually acceptable to all three parties.
Correct.
And
Yeah.
we're having a little difficulty on the sewer contract that Rick has stated, so
Yeah,
we do have some reservations.
I understand.
and we certainly don't want to be giving
You
up
should too.
Yes, I
any
understand.
tax revenue, any Bruce Township tax revenue. So, because what we give up, where's the makeup come from? Comes from the rest of us, people that are living in Bruce. I don't want to pay more.
Yeah, we don't think that the taxes is being addressed at this point unless they're taking over the property like they did the industrial property.
Well, a 425, again, it's an interim agreement, and it's a clean sheet of paper. It's a separate process that keeps the County Board of Commissioners out of the process. It allows the two municipalities to take and negotiate on a clean sheet of paper. But again, based on the history I'm seeing with sewer and with the, Ford plant leaving the village, I mean, it wouldn't be in their best interest to give up anything for free. So my bet would be they would want something. They would want a portion, increased portion of taxes of that property. And that's a no-win for the taxpayers. you know, it's a win for you being allowed to develop with water, but no one else in the township. It's just, it's not a win for them.
Our conditions mention that this is conditional upon engineering approval. To get engineering approval, we have to have a water source, a waste source, and I think that can be worked out at that point in time.
Well, I think even before the engineering approval, you need a intergovernmental agreement
That's correct.
between the two municipalities. And,
Yeah.
you know, we've been talking about this multiple times in work group meetings, and for whatever reason, the mark has not been moved.
Again, we present this when it comes time, and if the township, if Romeo, the village of Romeo is available, the water's available.
So Mike,
But this-
I'll try to address it. Maybe Rick, you can correct me if I'm not
Okay, go.
speaking correctly, but I think what would have been more palatable is if you could have stated that it would be a mutual, and you would have had some, because there's certain conditions that we're concerned about as Bruce Township. One, we don't want it to impact our tax base. Two, we don't want a risk of annexation. And number three, on your behalf, this separation agreement that was sent to us, if, let's say we did get permission to lay some sewer pipe or water all the way out to where your property is, and you wanted to get off of Romeo and get onto Great Lakes water through us, this separation agreement would require the property owners, or this particular property owners, to pay Washington for the water they're using and to pay Romeo for the water they're not using. In other words, continue to pay Romeo for the service they're not getting. So if I were to do a 425 agreement, I would want something in that agreement that would protect your future property owners from this type of an agreement.
Absolutely, yeah.
So that's all I'm saying, is that it would have been better if you could have said that, and if terms cannot be reached, that you would have some alternative, like a community well or something.
Yeah, we could modify our.
Because it might be difficult to get to an
We could
agreement.
modify our conditions to that verbiage.
To include the community well if needed.
Yeah, if they can't develop it because there's no water, that we could put a well in as well. I thought we were trying to stay away from that because we know there was a lot of concerns in the area. There's not enough water, they're having problems with water. So we were trying to keep it with,
Understand.
even though that we're hearing that the water's not that good from the village, we're trying to make that a condition that we have to use that so we don't tap into the ground to cause any problems to the neighboring properties.
Mike, you might be able to answer this, but if there is going to be a well problem,
Well,
when-
if they go with water, there's not a well problem.
right,
There's more of a dewatering problem, perhaps.
all right,
But when, my concern originally, my first question had to do with, if they did do wells, the mitigation strategy to have it eliminate, or a little bit of a mitigation strategy similar to what we did on the amendment to the Metco Timbers, which is limiting the flow of water from the pumps. And two, setting up a fund with a certain percentage of the HOA fees that could be applied to damages from adverse wells, that after 10 years, if there wasn't any, then that HOA fees would flow back. But I don't think the developer looked at that because they were looking at a different water source other than wells.
Correct.
all right. Well, is that required, in your opinion, for tonight's decision on rezoning?
I have some concerns over the way that number 6 is written. I also have a concern, the same ones that Joe has with number 3, that it would be a contingent on zoning board granting setting variances, and the same thing with number 10. Is the lots, I don't think the lot split's a huge issue, because I've already gotten some information through
Lisa Griffin.
Lisa Griffin, that's not a huge issue. But the variances are not decided here, they're decided at the ZBA. So it'd have to be a contingency on the ZBA. The ZBA could say no. But we can't say, we can't vote as a ZBA here, we're the planning commission.
Right.
That's a ZBA, that's in
Right.
their sphere
Decision.
of decision-making.
Yeah, that's correct.
And just to make it clarity, in your introduction, you said that we're a recommending committee.
Mhm.
We are, but there are some things that we do have final say-so on in that
Yeah.
site plans. So I just
Yeah.
want to
Yeah.
clear that up.
Mike, if I can just interject a point of clarification regarding item 10 with the lot split, which is possible.
Yeah.
Dimensionally, it is possible, but it lowers the parent parcel from 5.2 acres down to 4.7. So, using the 4.7 as compared to Deer Park density, it would be a 24% advantage as compared.
So there's a density issue.
It is a density, especially for the neighbors. I mean, the applicant has stated previously, they want to be like Deer Park. So you want to be like Deer Park, the equivalent density with 4.7 acres would be 4 buildings, 16 units total, with a lot split, allowing the build of that house on that 20,000 square foot lot.
What Joe said earlier, we can do up to 12 units based on the numbers, right? So that would be, let's say it's 8 to 10 single-family resident homes with kids, and bicycles, and hoops,
I think
bonfires.
you want to
So I just
address the
did-
commission.
Yeah, I just did this today. I had 12 trips when we left our house. To and from work.
Would you let the gentleman speak, please? Thank you.
I'm just,
You'll have a
bringing this
chance.
up, just so everyone knows that right now, the way that it is, it's between 8 and 12, 12 by the numbers with retention, probably around 9 single-family homes without doing anything. We wanted a 55-plus community. We want it to match next door. Everyone, that's the way it's gonna be advertised. It fits that criteria of folks, and that's what we're going for. So 20 units, again, I know originally it was based on 24, they had to put wells in. So they lost 4 units when they put the wells in. So technically, we're at 20 with 1 residential lot, basically. So we're 3 short of the original approval. I know they were 0.5 acres more, but I think with the conditions that we have, and we can modify them to change some of the language, as Joe had commented on, I think we should, be really, 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 really close to making this happen.
Well, plus the condominium project has less of a need for water, less of a need for the sewage capacity, because we're expecting 1 or 2 people living in these condominiums as seniors. So I think overall, there's a true benefit to everybody, we believe, to do a condominium project.
So would you guys be willing, you talk about the 55 and over plus community, and through my own research, I found that you can make a community like this through the Fair Housing Act. There are exceptions to the Fair Housing Act. There's 2 thresholds. One is at 55, which I think is 80%, and then at 62, you can do 100%, so you're not in violation of any law. Would you be willing to go that far, that
Well,
under the law?
yeah,
'Cause
yes.
you say advertise, but I'm saying that would you go to within the law, a senior-only community?
I wouldn't want to discriminate, if somebody came in that was
It's not
54 years
discrimination
old.
under the law.
Well, I think the language we put here covers us all across the board, because we're saying that just in case we have coverage now under state or federal law. Because the state laws, a little bit, they add the age. That's what they add. They add the word age to it, where the federal does not.
The state law also has exceptions for housing.
Potentially, if we can get around it without having a lawsuit, then we're fine with that. We want, just the design of the project itself with 2-bedroom condominiums, we feel that it's gonna be a 55, 60 plus anyways. At 55, you're still living in a house, I believe. So I
Yeah,
really think,
making a bet and making a commitment are 2 different things. That's all I'm saying. So you guys are saying, you would advertise it, but you wouldn't force it.
we could make it as a commitment as long as we're not breaking the law. We don't wanna break the law.
Right now, Deer Park doesn't have that in their homeowners association.
That's true, they don't.
Okay.
But you're coming to us with some conditional zoning, and one of the things that you keep leaning on is that it's not legal, blah, blah, blah. Well, I think it is legal.
We have to let the lawyers work that out.
It's possible.
I mean, that would strengthen your case, because your argument is you want less traffic. If you force it to be a senior committee, in all likelihood,
Well,
you'll
there's
have less
less
traffic than
noise,
than
less
a
everything.
family-oriented subdivision. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else from the commissioners? If not, I'll ask people in the audience. The gentleman that came with these two gentlemen. If you have something you want to add, feel free to do it now. Otherwise, we'll open it up for others to approach the podium, give your name, address, and express your comments. Sir, do you need anything?
I have nothing to add. I'm happy to answer any questions. So.
Okay, thank you. So, to the audience, Anne Marie?
I think I have about 10, no, maybe 11 or 12. So, okay.
Yes?
Thanks.
Please.
Okay, we had 7 issues we wish to speak to.
Anne Marie, if you can pull the mic a little as close as you can, please, so people can hear you.
Like that?
Well, the tip of the mic facing you about.
Like that?
Yep,
Okay.
better,
And
thank
then
you.
Name and address, please.
Anne Marie Boyce, 70170 Whitetail Lane, speaking on behalf of Deer Park Condominiums. The first issue we'd like to address is the density of the development. It was already pointed out here that he's proposing a development that's denser than Deer Park. My own math was 25%, but I understand now it's 24%. Even if you take away the 100-foot radius where we can't build because of our community well and the isolation zone, it's still 17% denser than Deer Park. He's listed commitments which now reflect a minimum of 1,400 square feet per unit. It's closer to Deer Park, but he apparently is saying it's not viable without variances because the 5 buildings, 4 units each, are crammed into the back 4.5 acres of the property. I expect that's the same reason that his retention pond appears to be only 20 feet from the northerly and easterly property lines. Deer Park's a larger piece of property. We meet all setbacks. We've maintained a wooded buffer as we can on our side of the shared property line. Our pond is 40 feet from the easterly property line and 140 feet from the northerly property line. So in summation on that item, a condo development denser than Deer Park is unacceptable to Deer Park. Second issue, which will be the same whether it's single-family homes or condominiums, has to do with our well and water system. We understand there's been a soil investigation study done and a commitment to hold to Eagle regulations. While that's assuring, bad stuff can still happen. I know you don't agree with it. At your March meeting, Mr. Dan Walker, who was a commissioner, reported on yet another instance of a building project in Washington Township on Powell Road, taking out 5 private wells. That happened within the last year, so that development would have had to take place under current guidelines, either Eagle or the county. We understand that Mr. Sirikoff is refusing at this point to provide a bond or hold money in escrow for Deer Park, which is a regulated public water supply. We've consulted with the Eagle engineers and are taking our own precautions. This means efficiency testing, full well inspection, storage tank inspection, testing for all chemicals, metals, bacteria, to make sure that they are in top shape before he does anything. Our well house equipment is all new. It was installed in February of this year. I can say this, that despite his assurances, which are fine, if something negatively happens to Deer Park's well or water system, he will assuredly be hearing from Macomb County Health Department or Eagle. To the extent that damage is caused to Deer Park's infrastructure, if our insurance policy covers it, and to the extent that it does, Mr. Sirikoff will be hearing from our insurance company. He's an insurance agent. He knows how this works. Lastly, if he's up for a public relations crisis, I certainly expect he's going to have one on his hands if he takes out or damages a public water supply. Third item, the 55-plus senior development. Mr. Tremblay already got into this. There were repeated promises multiple times at the October 2021 and March 2022 meetings that he would do a 55 and older. As Mr. Tremblay pointed out, there's an exception in the Elliott-Larsen Act, Michigan, that it's not age discrimination. 55 and older communities are allowed. He did commit to doing anything that the law provides, but his conditions that came in said he's only committing to advertising his project as a 55-plus community. By doing that, advertising as a 55-plus, when it's not supported by the master deed bylaws and compliance with the Older Persons Act, that in fact is a violation of the Fair Housing Law. I have to hand out, it's over in my pile there, a list of probably 24 55-plus home or condo developments in the state of Michigan at this time. There are dozens and dozens more of developments that are a leasing type arrangement. We believe that any condo development should be consistent with the prior promises to have that organized as a 55-plus community. In terms of the potential of rented or leased units, last October, I believe, Mr. Sirikoff committed that all the units would be for sale. Now, he's apparently saying, he didn't say this, but the lack of it, I'm assuming, means that his units may be sold, leased, or rented, depending on the conditions of the market at the time. So if there's a dip in the housing market, Mr. Sirikoff can't sell for the price he needs, he may choose to rent or lease. That's open-ended. That's unacceptable to Deer Park. We don't want to live next to any of a rental community, and I doubt anybody else in the neighborhood does. Sorry about this, but it gets to some of the issues that you were just talking about here. Mr. Torres has argued that his proposed development is an intended expansion of Deer Park. He submitted the Deer Park master deed as part of his package to you, and I'd like to make a few comments about that. The expansion of Deer Park was limited to CRK Properties. That's the Deer Park developer, no one else. Not another developer, not the Deer Park Association, not Mr. and Mrs. Peach, who were the prior owners of the property, and not Mr. Sirikoff. Under the provisions of the Deer Park Master Deed in the Michigan law, any expansion opportunity and all related reserved developer rights expired after 6 years. Any future development died in September of 1994. If the township had any idea of deeming 156 West Gates a site for future condominiums, they could have undertaken the rezoning of his lot 21 at the same time Deer Park was rezoned. 34 years went by and there were multiple opportunities through all the frequent updating of the master plan and the future land use map to do that, and it never happened. Mr. Tangari also mentioned at the October and March 2020 meetings, 2022 meetings, that from a legal standpoint, Deer Park has no obligation to support any expansion, and that any connection to anything growing through Deer Park would have to be negotiated. Next issue has to do with the stormwater drainage. This connects to the expansion of Deer Park. The fact that Deer Park stormwater drainage system was 35 years ago sized to take on more water is irrelevant. That was done for the benefit of CRK Properties only. Mr. Sirikoff's not entitled to an easement through the private storm drainage wholly located within Deer Park. That's part of the common elements of Deer Park, and any and all easements were created for the exclusive use of Deer Park. He also submitted some design standards as part of his submission to the council, or to the board for this meeting. If you read those design standards, they explicitly state that it's the responsibility of the developer to secure necessary easements from downstream property owners, which we would be to Lot 21. In terms of the McCarg lawsuit that Mr. Torres mentioned, that had nothing at all to do with the natural flow of the water. The developer of Deer Park owned both what I call the old Mellon House that's still there today, as well as Deer Park proper. He owned it all. He sold the property to Mr. McCarg on a land contract. He still had title to it. There was a dispute between those two entities about where the drainage water for the Mellon House should go. There was no court ruling saying that it had to go downhill into Deer Park. There was a settlement agreement during the midst of the lawsuit where there was some temporary arrangement for McCarg to drain into Deer Park until he built his own retention pond, which is there now. It had nothing to do with anything with respect to his lot. The last item has to do with, just in principle, having to do with our master plan. We remain opposed in principle to the rezoning of 156 West Gates because of the glaring inconsistency with the master plan and future land use map. Every township official that was elected 2 years ago promised to abide by the master plan or not permit higher density development. You're considering a recommendation that will result in a precedent for identical or similar requests for condominiums in this quadrant of the township, with the same or similar type of easily met conditions offered by Mr. Sirikoff. I'd actually argue that Mr. Sirikoff has created the blueprint. So if the township approves this conditional rezoning, I understand it's not this forum, I expect that Mr. Sirikoff or any other like-minded prospector or developer will be receiving offers to purchase opportunities for homes and land directly to the west of him on Van Dyke. It's opening the doors. And that's all I have. I'll hand you out my list.
Water? Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Don Stone. I live at 170 West Gates. That's the property just west of 156 West Gates. I want to first touch base on something that Anne Marie just said, because with going around and talking to everybody, all my neighbors, even the people on Kading, the people on Mellon, the people on Van Dyke, the people on Turner, the people on East Gates, the people on Ewell and Fairgrove, all these people oppose what they are trying to do by rezoning this and putting condos there. But to touch base on something she said, while talking to some of my neighbors directly to the west of me and north on Van Dyke, I discovered that collectively we have over 6 acres there. And if there was any expansion done, you could just go ahead and buy up those properties, and who knows what will happen to my property when I'm gone. My grandkids may sell it. There's a house vacant next door to me that will probably be up for sale. And then there's 2 other properties just to the north on Van Dyke that are 2 acres each. You could put condos in there too. It'd be more than 6 acres. It'd be larger than what he's proposing. We could have condos there that kind of look like the township of Washington at 27 Mile in Van Dyke. This is really, really scary. There's something else I want to talk about. I know that they did drilling because I could hear them back there doing the drilling. And I thought to myself, this was the most opportune time to do that. August, which is the driest, and it's been the driest summer that we've had in a long time. Not the driest, but pretty dry. Earlier, in early June, I trespassed on his property, walked back there. I know that property very well. And I had to wear boots because it was wet. And it extended all the way from the west to the east to the condos at Deer Park. Now, I know that they did the drilling, and they drilled 4 holes. And they found water, I think, at 4 feet in one of the holes. They're going to drill basements. They're going to de-tree all of the trees that are back there. And there are hundreds of them. They're going to de-tree it. Those trees suck up water. I'm telling you, there is an underground river that flows there. Not all the time, but a lot of the months of the year. And they will have trouble, and so will all of us who have flooding. I personally don't get flooding. I'm to the west of them. The people on Kading get flooding, and the people at Deer Park get flooding. And anybody who buys a condo in there is going to get flooding. It is so scary that we're going to put 21 residents in that small area. I've told you about the traffic. You guys have heard me for the last 3-4 years coming here and talking about the traffic. Most of the people that live on West Gates know how bad it is to back out of your driveway. It's only going to get worse, even if he don't get to the rezoning. It's going to get worse. There's a lot of building going on in Bruce Township, and they're going to come through here. We're scared. A lot of us are scared. And I hope that you will turn down him once again, that you'll turn him down and you won't allow the rezoning and the building of the condos. I thank you very much.
Anyone else in the audience?
John McNeil at 184 West Gates. What I don't understand is how long this has been going on. The last board turned them down, and everything, and they keep coming back with more and more stuff. How long is this going to go on? You guys can't even remember when they first came up here.
No, we remember. If it's a
You
quiz.
you're sitting there. Well, I don't remember when they did that. I don't remember when.
No,
they
we
did
remember
this,
when
but-
it happened.
Okay,
It started in 2018, if you want to know the date.
Right. Well, okay, so that's 4 years. 4 years. They keep going on with it.
And it has changed too. There have been different
Because they keep
proposals.
saying one story, and then you would think that if you came in with this kind of development.
No, let's get the facts.
You would
Let me-
have
let
all
me
your
help you.
ducks in a row before you came up to the board. I would think. I mean,
Let Jo-
if I was
let,
spending that kind of money, I
If
would.
you
Mike
want to know,
answer your
really
question.
know, then allow me to speak.
Okay.
It started in 2018. It was a much denser development. There were no conditions attached to it. So things have changed. The developer has changed his conditions and what he's proposing. So it started in 2018, but 2018 was vastly different from what's proposed here today. So we do know what came before us, and we do know what's being proposed today. We know what was proposed before. So
Okay, well-
that's the answer to your question. We do know.
It doesn't seem like it when he said he can't remember the last time. I mean, I know you gotta look it up. I'm just saying it's been so long that people don't remember anymore, is what I'm getting to. We have to keep coming down here to fight them on it, and it's been going on for a long time. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? There's one more. There's one more.
Doug Peoples, 11820 Kading. Let's see, I have one of the properties that's to the north, and I think of the, like, 6 properties there, 4 of us are at least lower than his property, and we have concerns of the runoff. And, let's see, I think the question was answered, where was the drilling? Because the aquifer is on the very west end of his property, kind of the west area where my house is and the neighbors to the west of us. And also the variance to the setback will have to be evaluated by the fire marshal, because it's a 50-foot setback is for the fire trucks to get in there.
Okay, anyone else? Sir? Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to make some comments to public's comments. When it comes to the drain and design of the drain, the law is the law. Downstream or downhill can't block the water from the uphill. It's just the way it's always been. It's either you have to allow us to have the water roll over the land, which nobody's gonna want, or you control it through an access point that's directed by Macomb County Drain Office. We've been doing this forever. That's been the rules. Nobody's gonna change those rules here, number one. In terms of rezoning, Deer Park was rezoned. I don't care what anyone wants to think, it was rezoned. When properties are rezoned, you are facing the fact that you change the current surrounding properties, opportunities to rezone as well. If you look at Deer Park, you look at the submissions, Mr. Surkoff's property was phase 2. It's designed in the calculations, and there's even a submission of engineering drawing, future phase Deer Park, Tom's property. So to say it was never meant to be rezoned, that's not totally true. Residential versus condos. Yes, Mr. Surkoff can go in tomorrow, design it exactly how it's allowed to be built. The same water, the same street, the same water lines, the same sewers are going to be put in. The same trees are going to come down. We thought that offering a condominium project was going to help alleviate some of the issues. So for Mr. Surkoff to want to go in and put houses, he can do that tomorrow. It's not going to change their position. They still don't want anything there. That's what I hear. So if you want to go one by one of each of those conditions that you're all worried about, I'm telling you, the condos will give you a better outcome. In terms of the size of the units and the setbacks, we only put the condition of the additional potential variances if needed because the township in one of our work session meetings asked us to go larger on the units. We had them smaller that met all the conditions. They asked us to change them to go a little bit larger. We're trying to accommodate that request. So
I'm
all
sorry,
we
you said the township?
The township, yes. So we're trying to just say, if there's a 2 foot or 5 foot miss, if you allow us the variance, we're happy to go larger on the units. One of the complaints was, our units are larger next door, you should be more accommodating to the same size for valuation. We're okay with that. So it wasn't something that we changed because we think we're benefiting from it. We did it as a request, as one of the suggestions at one of the last work session meetings. In terms of the street design, if you go through all the notes when Deer Park was approved, their streets are not to the code. They're not to the fire department code. They're not to the bus code. They don't have a deceleration lane. That was going back and forth for 4 years after the project was approved, but they got through with it. And we feel trying to offer a negotiation that everyone is happy with. At the end of the day, I think the largest debate we've heard was population. And we think 20 units of condos is still going to give you much less total population than 12 single-family homes. It's less intrusive on your utilities. It's less intrusive on the streets. It's less intrusive on rides in and out. And it's less intrusive for noise or issues. So coming up here as Deer Park and saying, we were here first, we changed, you don't get to change, just because this was 30 years ago, that doesn't matter. If I put a factory on my property 50 years ago, for sure, the guy next door isn't going to be able to put a factory. You can't cut him out just because I was the first guy in and I was the guy to make friends on that current board to make that change. When you go and make a change, you set up a precedent that changes can happen because you are affecting the neighbor's property. And that's been always practiced in every city, every township. So I think that Mr. Surkoff has gone through a lot of meetings. We have evolved. I think we've got really close. And we want to create a great project here. There's going to be a project that goes on this property. I think everyone can understand that something can go in, whether it's single family or condos. I think we're just here to say we feel that the condos is the better choice. And that's the conclusion of my rebuttal to most of the comments that they made. And if Mr. Surkoff as an owner can make the final decision what he wants to offer, but These are based on development experience.
Don?
Yeah, I just want to add something. I don't know. I don't know how relevant this is, but I remember Mr. Peach and Mrs. Peach. And I remember them being offered to buy 2 acres of their property by the developer of Deer Park, and he turned them down. There was never any agreement that was before, they started a development. Mr. Peach, and I've talked to his son and their daughter-in-law just the other day, just to make sure I was right about that. And he offered them $300,000 for 2 acres, and they turned him down. So there was no agreement at all with Deer Park to develop the property at 156 West Gates. The only thing that I know of is he wanted 2 acres of their 5 acres, and he offered them $300,000.
Okay.
And back then, that was a lot of money for 2 acres.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
For 2 acres.
Yeah.
I got a question for Joe. On the conditions offered by the developer, he references RML1, and I can't find RML1.
That there is, it's RM1. RM1 is the district. I believe that's a typo, yeah.
Okay.
I have a couple of comments regarding water as it pertains to R1B, currently zoned, single family. With that build out, there would be individual wells because they're individual single family structures. When you go to condo, you gotta have my understanding is you have to have a municipal well system, or that puts us into a situation where the applicant's requesting city water to alleviate some of the expense from that. So, but by the advantage to the township by remaining R1B is we wouldn't be dealing with any potential 425 agreement that, I'm not a betting person, but that's a bet I would take that is the one that is going to cost the township tax revenue. And I personally, well, I'm not going to, I'll save my personal on that. Also, I think the most recent development that didn't meet R1B standards was completed by Deer Park, correct? 1989?
Oh, it was actually started in '87, when they went through all of the site planning and whatnot. '87, their master deed was in September of '88. The first buildings were sold in 1989.
Okay, so they were done early 90s anyway.
Oh, yeah.
So in that area, the Deer Park condominium complex is the standout development that doesn't meet R1B requirements. But alternatively, I believe 2016, if I looked up the tax information correctly, west end of Kading on the south side, there's 3 new houses. And they're built on 20,000 square foot lots, meeting R1B standards. And these people made an investment in the community. And I am going to make an opinion on that. If I lived over there and I've driven through Deer Park, I think the density is comparable or something I could live with rather, but what I'm seeing regarding the proposal here, the increase in density, to me, it looks more like a apartment-like development. And when my mother died, I retained her condo down at 27 and Jewel in the Lombardo complex. There was a reference to that down there. That is a very tasteful condominium complex. This, to me, looks more like condos at the end of Fairgrove Street. And my daughter owned one over there. And you know, that's all I'm gonna say about that.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
It was brought up that the township during one of these working meetings asked for this increase in
No, I think
structure.
it happened at a planning commission meeting.
Okay.
But I'll talk about the work group sessions.
Okay.
If you don't
Yeah,
mind.
go ahead.
So we did have a number of work group sessions with the developer, because really what we're looking at is the developer, without asking for any rezoning, could probably put, like you said, nine single-family homes up there in the R1B district, which would attract probably a different type of clientele than this would. We had a lot of discussion, what we thought might be palatable to the township. And one of the things was density, and we talked about a lot of other things. And I'm a little bit disappointed that these conditions don't hit on the points that we discussed. So the thing really to consider is the developers put some conditions in place with his proposal. He can do probably nine single-family homes, or he can do 20 condos and a new home with this. So obviously noise, traffic, and number of people changes with a single-family home versus a condominium. But I just wanted to share that we did have multiple work group sessions. These conditions don't quite hit on what we discussed.
But it does, the work group did come up with a number of 20 units? Is that what I heard you say?
I think we had two alternatives. One was 18 with no house, I think, with equivalent density.
No,
wasn't it?
where we ended up with, there was one option that you said that would be, using your word, palatable, potentially more palatable by the township, was 5 buildings, total of 20 units on the full 5.2 acres. Okay, where am I incorrect on that?
I think we were 16, weren't we 16 with the house?
No, 16, yeah, correct, 16 with a house, and that is 4.6 acres. And it would be total of 20 with a house gone, which is a total of 5.2 acres. And both of those are still denser than what Deer Park is.
I think it was 20 with a water and 18 with a well. I think that's where we ended up. That's where the discrepancy is. I think that's what, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
I think this comes a little short from what we discussed.
Yeah, certainly the property split is a new element since our last work group meeting.
I mean, even if we were to accept these would have to be reworded based on the discussion we've had already with the planner and with the developer.
All right. I would like to see a development there, since everybody's expressing their opinion. I would like to see a development. My biggest concern is not traffic. I did chastise you at the very first meeting saying, oh, you took the old traffic and you added 10% and, 2 points and you didn't actually count it. I'm overlooking that because I drive through there a lot. And if this were a senior citizen, over 50s development, I think I could live with what you proposed back then. I sat through a couple of those meetings. I missed the last one for a personal reason. I would like to see the development. I'm not sure that I agree with my partner next door here, my fellow commissioner, with the number. And I'm not sure that I can agree with the 20, but somewhere in between, for me, would work. As far as what happened years and years and years ago, maybe it's just years ago. I put less priority on that, less attention to it, because times change. But this debate on whether you can discharge water over to Deer Park, and they don't have a choice in the matter, that bothers me. But I think if we're gonna move this forward over to the board, that I would ask them to probe that very, very heavily, because you don't wanna go too much further and then find out you can't do what you think you can do. We don't wanna let you go anywhere where you're gonna hurt our residents. And so, I don't know what the motion's going to be. I'm not gonna make it, but I would tell everyone here, I would like to see development there. It's an improvement. It should be an improvement to the tax base, and I understand your concern. And as far as condominiums extending beyond, time will tell. There are some older homes in there. Perhaps someone's gonna take them down and wanna put a home, like Mr. Sirikoff said. He would make available land for that. I don't know the future. What I do know is we've talked about this enough, and we need to move it on for final decision. And so the board would be able to watch this meeting. We need a motion, though, in order to let this committee vote on how each one of us feels, so then it can go on to the real decision makers in this case, which would be our township supervisor and his crew. Sir, Mr. Sirikoff?
I just want to make one comment. What if we propose 18 units and the lot? That would make it 19, less than 20, and that's what I would do. We could reduce it to 18. We would leave the current lot there the way that it is on the map to fit R1B. I believe it's 20,000 square foot, and that would get us down to the density that we need to be at.
Any other comments? Mike, do you feel comfortable in making the motion?
Does anyone else want to? I make most of the motions. I prefer if someone
Okay,
else can do one.
I can make a motion. So first, I'm going to preface this reminding Tom, Mike, and you already know, this is an advisory commission. So agreeing with Ed, it's time to get this before the board. So my motion is two-purpose. It basically, I think it addresses the concerns of you, all the residents, me, the commission, and also gets it before the board. So that is your opportunity to do your homework. Dot your I's, cross your T's, even if there's going to be some expenses involved to advance your project. It needs to be a little bit different methodology to have a different outcome. But I really feel that I need to take and submit this motion, so I'm going to read it. I move that the Planning Commission recommend denial of the request to conditionally rezone the property at 156 Gates from R1B residential single family to RM1 residential multiple family submitted by Tom Sirikoff on the following basis. 1, the conditional rezoning is inconsistent with the township's current adopted master plan and future land use map. 2, the applicant has not provided evidence that the property cannot be developed as currently zoned, which, reminding, is R1B. 3rd, approval of the requested conditional rezoning request would result in a 2-level zoning change that is unprecedented in the township. 4, the proposed development size, as presented tonight, would be approximately 24% more dense as compared to the Deer Park condominium complex immediately to the east and furthermore in conflict with the developer's stated intention to be like Deer Park as discussed during prior planning commission meetings and in numerous workshops. 5, continuing with the developer's statement that they want to be like Deer Park, Deer Park has a private community well service. The developer is requiring water service, well, I'll soften it up, requesting water service from the Village of Romeo. To date, evidence has not been presented to this commission regarding the terms of such an agreement. 6, during the last work group meeting and as a benchmark, the applicant was asked to consider potential mitigation stipulations regarding adverse effects to surrounding wells. The applicant was advised to review the August board meeting amendment to the Menco Timbers consent judgment. The conditions presented tonight by the developer do not address this issue. 7, the rezoning would grant a special benefit to the property owner not granted to other property owners within the predominantly R1B residential single-family district extending north of Gates, east of Van Dyke, west of Mellon, and south of Kading Streets. And 8, there is a risk that granting the rezoning request would set a precedent for more dense development in this area. That's my motion.
Second. Says it all.
Okay. Dana, were you able to capture that?
Yes.
I'll,
Sure, he'll give you a copy.
I'll send it to you.
I have a question. On number 4, the developer has offered to make a less dense development. Your statement on number 4 is not completely true with what he had restated.
Okay, I'd have to take and recalculate the numbers.
Is it still an issue at 18?
Correct.
The 24% is not correct, though.
Well, the 24% number is based on 20 units on the 4.7 acres
So
with the
your
lot
motion
split.
cannot
That's
be
his point.
inaccurate.
I'm sorry?
Your motion cannot be inaccurate because the developer has agreed to do less dense.
Okay, so,
I would suggest that if you got a calculator, you could probably figure out real quick what it is.
I'm trying to think. I know it's around 200,000. Joe, you've got I sent you the spreadsheet. I don't have my computer tonight. Let me know when you got it open.
Let's see. The one dated 8/18, does that sound like the right date?
Yep, that's it.
Okay.
Row 7,
Yeah, I got it.
and then you're gonna see number of units 20.
Yep.
Change that to 18, and over on the right, you'll get the percentage calculation.
Twelve. 12%.
12%?
Yes.
Okay, so, restating, let me restate item 4. Okay, this would be an amendment to my motion. Item 4, the proposed development size would be approximately 12%. 12% more dense as compared to the Deer Park condominium complex immediately to the east, and furthermore in conflict with the developer's stated intention to be like Deer Park as discussed during prior planning commission meetings and in numerous workshops. And this is based on the applicant's agreement to reduce the number of units from 20 to 18. And this would be with the lot split remaining, resulting in a parent buildable parcel of 4.7 acres.
And number 6, I think, I'm having trouble with number 6, because number 5 talks about the community wells, and number 6 talks about mitigation on wells, but the developer's only proposing municipal water, unless he's gonna rewrite number 6. But I would, if you're gonna do the motion, I think another one is number 9, that these conditions would have to be rewritten. And maybe come back to us, but number 1 would have to be changed based on the developer's agreement to go to 18. Number 3 would have to be rewritten, because that would be a contingency. I think number 6 needs to be rewritten based on discussion we've had with the developer regarding if you can't get to a mutual agreement, that it would be a community well. And
Okay.
number 8, or number 9 would have to be rewritten as a contingency, or number 10 would have to be written as a contingency also.
Yes.
You're talking about a rewrite by the developer?
Because as they're presented, they're not acceptable, the way they're written, because they're not written correctly.
You're talking about the way that the developer's written them, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
So I would add that as another, my suggestion is to add that as another condition on why it should be rejected.
That they submit that to us before board gets it. Is that what you're saying? That you're asking them to redo this?
If
In
I
order
were
to
if I
have
were
it get to
asking
the
for
board.
the wish, I would ask that these be rewritten and come back to us.
Oh, back to this
Awesome.
group.
That's what I would say, but you already have a motion and a second on the table.
Well, I respect your opinion, and, you know, trying to be fair to all parties. So,
I mean, but that, you already have a motion and a second. I'm just adding to the discussion that I would add another element
So you'd have to
for
withdraw
the
it.
okay, but you,
rejection.
so it'd be a
But I-
rejection of the motion and a,
I'm just adding to your reason for rejecting the request. But my preference would not be to make the motion that you had.
I'm sorry, not to make the motion, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you?
Make the motion that you had.
If I can intervene, I think what Rick is saying, he has a motion, has been seconded. We can vote on it and say no,
We could.
and then he can make a new motion.
But I was suggesting that if he does make that motion, that he add another element to that motion regarding the conditions as presented.
And I'm not quite, to be honest with you, I'm not completely understanding.
Because they need to be rewritten,
Basically, you're saying reject it because the conditions aren't appropriate or valid.
right? They're not valid, and the planning commission should be the ones that review these and make a recommendation to the board.
So he
And
can
I
just
think
add
these-
that to his motion?
That's
He
one
doesn't-
option,
He doesn't believe they're
that's
valid
one option.
as written?
But I think my preference would be that we ask the developer to rewrite these based on the discussion today and
So-
things that he's
so would it
committed
be-
to.
It would be a table?
That would be that would be, as my discussion, that would be my guidance.
Okay,
But you have a motion, you have a second, and it hasn't been voted on.
I do respect your opinion.
Because I wouldn't want this to go to the board and have these rewritten that we haven't seen. That's my biggest concern.
Okay, and you are our liaison to the board.
Yeah.
Okay, so procedurally, since I've submitted a motion and it's been seconded, what's the process?
You have an option to rescind your motion,
Right.
or we can vote on it.
And we can vote on it either yes or no, depending on what you think, right?
Okay, can I ask a question of the developer, or that'd be out of process?
Once it's seconded, it's the board's. It's the
Board's
commission.
discussion.
Rescind the motion.
Okay, I'm gonna rescind the motion.
That's all he needs to do, right? Okay.
We have that needs to be seconded, correct?
To rescind?
Rescind, I will second that motion.
Okay.
The seconder should agree to the rescission, yes.
Okay.
I
All right.
agree.
So Connie,
Second that, to
seconded.
rescind.
So we're back to go.
Okay, because no need to vote, because we didn't get to that point.
Correct.
I think your motion was well-written. I just think that some of the things in there are inconsistent with the discussion that we've had today.
Okay.
Well, did you say he could take that motion and add other specific,
Yeah, that was not
Things?
that's not what I would do, but he could.
okay.
I'll make a motion.
Go ahead.
I know you asked me to make one at first.
I know.
Can I have a question? Can I ask a question first?
Sure.
So if we make a motion one way or the other, the information that's presented to us, that's what the board will see, or can the developer modify that between now and the board and provide something, to your point, that we haven't seen yet?
Here's what's concerning to me is in the past, on this very issue, the developer has introduced new information to the board that wasn't presented to us. Now, me as a member on the board, I recommend to the board that I come back here because we need to see the full picture first. Otherwise, we're making a recommendation based on different terms
Sure.
than what the board has. So my recommendation is that, and that's, I'm gonna ask the developer if he's okay with this, is to table this. And based on the discussion that we had today, that you come back and rewrite these according to the discussions that we've had that might be more palatable to the community and to the planning commission.
Yeah, I think.
If you want to.
Yeah, what probably would be important is to actually maybe have the city attorney look at it so that we're not making a mistake or writing it wrong. We're not lawyers, we're trying to come across with the intent. And what Mr. Tangori is saying is potentially it can be looked at incorrectly with one word out of place. Maybe if we rewrite it or have the attorney comment on how.
Here's a recommendation from me, personal recommendation.
Yeah,
Put a draft together,
okay,
send it to Dana Buchanan,
okay,
have our planning and zoning administrator work with our planning consultant
okay.
to review that, because Joe's here. Joe knows what needs to be done. And if it comes back that you guys are all in agreement with what it looks like, then it's up to us to consider those rewritten conditions to say, is it closer to being compatible with what we think might work for our community? That's my recommendation.
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay, so
If I may add a point of clarification, you correct me if I'm wrong, but I think during my preface to announcing the motion, I encouraged the applicant to consider and kind of re-massage the content, which potentially would have been different than what is presented here tonight. So, I mean, that,
I'm not a big fan of that, to be quite
okay,
honest.
so, I mean, I'm sensing that was your issue with my motion, correct?
Yeah, I'm not a
Okay,
big fan of
so
it.
just point of clarification for the audience, that's how it started, and that's how we got to where we're at. Okay? So, still trying to work towards a outcome that works as best as possible for everyone concerned.
Just a point of order before discussion continues. Did we have a second on that motion?
I haven't made a motion.
Okay, I wasn't
Jared
sure
wanted
if
to
you'd
talk
made
first.
the motion. I think.
Sorry.
Okay. I heard you kind of start to make the motion, so I just wanted to make sure that we were not.
Certainly, the developer has the right to propose any conditions that you would like. But I think specifically the ones that we were talking about today that maybe you might want to relook at are points number 1, number 3, number 6, number 8, and number 10.
I had a question. In a conditional rezoning, conditional request, are you allowed to make any variance within that condition?
You mean variance on easements?
As a condition for a setback?
I think what you could state is that it would be contingent upon the zoning board of appeals granting the variances that you're requesting.
Right.
Because we can't decide that here. And to say that the township will, we can't commit to that condition. But to
Right.
say that it's dependent upon variance acceptance by the zoning board of appeals, that could be part of a condition.
So we'll work together next time so we don't run into what we're
Miss that.
into right now.
Yeah, I think between Dana, Mike, and Joe,
Okay.
if it could be massaged,
Do
that
they
would help.
Do they still need to watch the men's meeting like you recommended before?
I mean, that's up to these guys, what they want to do. Yeah, if you want to look at the
Don't you
men's
think that'd
meeting,
be
because
helpful?
in the event that you do, in number 6, state that if we can't come into an acceptable 425 agreement between the 3 parties, that you would do a community well, we would be looking at some type of mitigation. And if you take a look at the August board meeting, and the board packet from Echo Timmons, there was an amendment done. Yeah, it was August board meeting. Because our consent judgment there actually had that they would secure a bond for an adverse impact. Well, they couldn't get anybody to sign for the bond because it was too generic. Where does it end? Where does the liability end, right? So where are the surrounding wells? Is it a mile away? So nobody would sign it for that bond. So they wanted to remove it. The board went back to the developer and said, well, we don't just want to remove it because we still have a concern about adverse impact to well. So what the developer proposed and the community around them was okay with, and we were okay with, was limiting the flow of well water to, I think, 15 gallons a minute. And number two is part of the HOA fee to set aside a percentage, I think in their case it was 10 or 15%, that could be used to reimburse someone who had an adverse impact that was directly attributable to that. And then after 10 years, if there were no claims, then you would be off the hook, and it just reverts back to the HOA, that 10 or 15% retainer. And we felt it was fair, the surrounding community felt it was fair. Just a suggestion out there, if you want to look at that. Certainly you're at whatever conditions that you think.
Okay, to press forward, we do not need a motion of any sort, because this is.
Yeah, we do.
We would need a motion to
Motion
postpone.
table.
Yeah.
All at the table.
And then I need a second, and then we need discussion.
A second.
Okay, we have one question.
Yes.
Anne Marie?
Is this gonna be tabled for months and months, or is,
Oh, that's a good question.
or is it definitive, like?
We were gonna come back earlier, but it was postponed because of summer vacations the last two times, so.
So let me
You
ask.
can postpone to a date certain, or you
I'd
can
like to do
postpone
that.
to
I
a
would like
date
to amend my
uncertain.
motion, if you don't mind,
Yeah.
Karen.
I do not mind.
How much time do you guys need? And the reason, I know why the reasons Anne Marie's asking this, because there have been some delays that we think were inordinate in between. But
To change the language a day or two.
So you think you can come back in September,
mitigation
or I mean
bond.
October? You think you can come back here in October, or you want to give you, I'll give you 2 months if you want.
Today, yeah.
Let's take one.
Two, just in case,
This is
if
gonna
we need
end.
it. I just don't wanna keep.
Right, I'll give you
One or
2.
the other.
If we come back.
I don't know if you need to, but,
You don't need it.
okay, so I'll make my motion that
Go ahead.
it has to come, it's tabled until the October meeting,
I second.
October Planning Commission meeting,
I second.
based on the same conditions that I had before.
Agreed.
Okay.
So 10/5,
Good point, Anne Marie.
2022.
Yes,
So Danny, you have the motion made by Tremblay and
it'll be
Vincent,
October 5th,
second.
Yes, October 5th.
October 5th. October 5th, guys. First
first
Wednesday
Wednesday.
of the month.
Okay. Motion requires a roll call.
It's not over till it's over.
Yeah, and Dana, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, sir. Vinson,
Yes.
Cupits,
Yes.
Hagelstein,
Yes.
Chapman,
Yes,
Tremblay.
Yes, I just want to add one more comment, though. And I'm in your court, too. I'd like to see something go there, too, but it's got to be the right thing.
Yes, I agree.
So I'm a yes.
yeah, something will go there eventually.
Yeah.
One thing or another.
The right thing.
It will.
Yeah, and you got somebody that's trying to cooperate.
Okay.
Okay, so the motion passed. We'll take about a 5-minute break, and then the commission will be back to finish off our agenda.
The room will be empty.
Item
Either come to terms or don't. That has been going on since 18.
Thanks, everybody.